Hello everyone, welcome to this first video series about project management, and in this video I'm going to talk about the project triple constraint. So before we get started, what is a project? Well, by definition of the Project Management Body of Knowledge Guide, a project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. So there's a couple of keywords here that are important, and the first one is temporary, means it's temporary, which means there's a beginning and an end to the project. Endeavor, which basically means that work must be done, all right? There is work that must be accomplished in order for the project to be completed. Is unique, all right, create something that was never created before or something on its own matter that is distinguishable from others. And finally, at the end, it generates a product, service, or a result. So in other words, something must come out of the project. So in order to understand that, the project is defined by three things, and we call it the project triple constraint, or it's like a triangle, the three things, okay? They decided to put this triangle with a little eye on the middle, so you know it's always looking at you, because the triple constraint really defines everything in the project, all right? The first thing is called scope. Scope is the work that must be done. Then we have schedule. Schedule is the dates or how we plan our activities. And finally, we have resources, which I'll explain in a little bit, but basically, you know, all the resources we need to accomplish the project. And this is the three things that basically define what your project is. So first of all, let's talk about scope, project scope. And a project will always deliver a product, a service, or a result, correct? And that means that there is work or effort that must be completed in order for that product or result to be created. All right. So the scope is basically the description of all the work from beginning to end of the project that must be accomplished in order for you to be able to do all these things. And this will be defined, or this will be affected, let's say, by what are the requirements of the project itself. So your requirements of the project affect the work that will be done. The higher the requirements of the project, the higher the amount of work you have to do. And when we talk about requirements, there's two main things here, which is the features that must be present in the product by the end, or in the product, service, or result, and the level of quality expected from the project. All right. So obviously, if you want to achieve something with lower quality, means that you can spend, your scope is going to be reduced. If you want something with higher quality, then your scope is going to be much higher. So project schedule. In terms of project schedule, first of all, remember the project is always a temporary endeavor, okay? And it's a temporary endeavor for something that is unique in terms of scope. And unlike in a process repeats itself with time, all right? You do the same tasks over and over and over again. And therefore, it's a continuous process, but with the same scope. A project is not like that. A project will have a start and an end point. And inside this start and end point, activities must be sequenced within those constraints. And there's many constraints that is going to happen, and I'll mention them later in a project. But we cannot schedule all the activities in any order we want. We have to schedule them according to the problems or to the restrictions. The last side of the triple constraint is project resources. And in project resources, we understand one thing. We know that in order to achieve the result of the project, we're going to have to do work. And to do that work, we need certain resources. Resources like cash, all right, obviously, people, and even equipment and facilities. Now, some projects require specific equipment, specific facilities. They're not available anytime you want. You might have to request them in advance, so you have to manage that. And in terms of constraints that this will generate, there's many problems here. And indeed, for example, you have to be careful that different types of resources might put different constraints, all right? So the type of resource itself is a type of constraint a lot of times. So, for example, you know, if you have an equipment that must be used, this creates a constraint because maybe not everyone can use that equipment, so you have to plan the right person to operate with that equipment. So that's a constraint. Another constraint is the amount of resources, all right? How much do we actually have? How many people, how many hours of their work, how much cash we have? This affects the way you plan. And finally, the timing of those resources. One thing, for example, you might have a project that says we have $1 million in this project, but does the money come in at the very beginning of the project, or does the majority of the money come later on in the project? This will affect what you can do during the period of the project. So to summarize, the triple constraint is extremely important because it defines what a project is. And the triple constraint is always scope, schedule, and resources. And this is the very basic of what project management is. And without knowing these three, I would say it would be very hard to plan what your project will be. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you have any questions on the comment section below.